Hello, Morgan. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, Leanne. It's
Oh,
a
really, my
pleasure.
pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, all mine, all mine. I'm really looking forward to this. So, we were chatting just before hitting record about your somewhat unusual journey into doing the work you do now. And I certainly would just love to start there. Like, how did that come about? Yeah, just a little bit of a taste of kind of how you've gone from, quite a different type of work to the work of spirituality you do now. And I know listeners would love to hear this too, but personally, I would just love to know.
It it started for me. Well, to be honest, if I go way back to when I was 17 years old, I got sick one time. I got sick. What did I have at the time? I think it was mono or something. I caught like a throat infection, and I was given some antibiotics. So I was on this antibiotics. So I had to take some days off of school. I was at high school at the time, and had to take some days off. And one night, I think it was a Friday night, I woke up and I looked up, and it was this big, giant light being, like an angel, wearing a white robe, shining bright, face, giant type of humanoid type of creature, just standing over my bed, and it seemed that it was angry. And I looked up at it, and I was frightened. And the angelic being, flipped my bed over, so I'm on the ground, and my bed is on top of me. I remember crawling from underneath the bed, or at least with the bed on top of me, and I ran into my parents' room to say there's someone in my room. My parents came running in the room, and there was no one there, and the bed was completely in the proper position. That's where it all started. so,
Wow.
so yeah, so that piqued my curiosity. Um, I thought about it since, because it always wondered what actually happened, because it felt so real.
Mm.
It was undeniable, but I couldn't explain how, after my parents came in the room, everything was totally intact. There was no one in my room. None of that stuff ever happened. And I'm like, oh my gosh, was I hallucinating? I couldn't figure out what it was. So it just stayed in the back of my mind for many years. I never even indulged in it in any way. So I went off, started I was starting to I was trying to pursue a musical career in hip hop R&B, and I was making a scene
Wow.
in the local area, and all that. So that's what I was trying to pursue. Of course, I signed a bad record deal, and things went wrong, and all that, and I needed to find something else to do. So I decided I wanted to try stand-up comedy, because I was told that I was funny, at least in front of small crowds, especially family crowds. So I said I want to try my hand at stand-up. So I ended up doing stand up for about 12 years. Within that time period, I did a TV show for 9 years out of the 12 years, and got became very successful at that. Became nationally known in Canada for my contribution in Canadian entertainment. And I was still doing stand up at the time too. So I was doing stand up, doing TV for 9 of those 12 years, and then but something I never felt fulfilled. Something, as much as I love doing stand up, I can't say I loved doing TV. I liked doing it if I was able to have my own way. But stand up gave me the ability to do whatever I wanted.
Mm.
What I wrote and how I can present it to the audience, and all that. But TV had a different. TV paid the bills. TV paid the bills. But I was in a position where I was able to do certain bits and skits of things that I wanted to do that was passionate to me. So it gave me the ability to do that. But stand up was my passion. But as time went on, um, I was losing that zeal for not necessarily for stand up, but I wasn't the feedback I was getting. It didn't fulfill me, so I wanted to go deeper. Um, During that time period, I remember I was going out and doing auditions, and one of the things I could never get over with an audition is the anxiety, butterflies in the stomach, the anxiety. I could do it in stand up no problem, but auditions was like a whole different deal. So one of my friends in the industry, she recommended that I should try a hypnotherapist, something I've never done before. So I did some research, looked up a hypnotherapy clinic in my area, well, at least close to my area. And I went to the clinic, and they happened to use these light and sound machines. So they use these light and sound machines. For those who don't know what that is, it's a device where you put on these goggles and it flashes light in your eyes, and you put on these headphones and it plays audio tones, which is like binaural beats, which is brainwave entrainment. So you play these two things together, and these binaural beats and these flashing lights is supposed to induce your brain waves to take your brain waves down to certain levels of states of consciousness. So I did this for a bit, and I was amazed at what it did for me. It opened me up creatively and did all these amazing things. And I wanted to go deeper into this brainwave entrainment path. So later on, after getting all these amazing benefits from from this light and sound machine, I
So
ordered a
could I
program.
just check? You didn't have, like, when you originally said hypnotherapy,
Mhm.
I was thinking kind of more traditional, talking style hypnotherapy, but you didn't have that. It was all the light and sound.
It was all light and
Yeah.
sound, but they
Mhm.
did the affirmations out loud, live, directly, one on one, while you had the headphones on. So it's not
Ah,
like
I
they were
see.
using, yeah. So they did all the traditional stuff,
Mm.
but using the modern technology of light and sound machines.
Mhm.
So after doing all of that, I ordered this program online, which and they made all these claims of what low carrier brainwave frequencies can do. So I ordered the package. To make a long story short, I ordered this package. Eventually came in the mail weeks later, because back in those days, because this is 20 years ago, so 21 years ago. So back in those days, you had to wait a number of weeks to get your package and do all that stuff. There was no soft copies or any of that, no digital stuff. It was all hardware stuff. So I ordered the program. They sent me a package of CDs that I had to use on a daily basis. And from the first time I put on I played these CDs, I felt this pulsing sensation on the top of my head. I didn't know anything about chakras, so I didn't know anything about crown chakras, say, heart chakras, none of that stuff. So I had this real pulsing sensation on the top of my head, and that was enough to intrigue me to want to continue doing this. So I kept on doing this program over and over and over again. Other things started to happen, moments of bliss and intoxication without any alcohol, and sensations of feeling high without any drugs, and all these amazing things started to happen. And I was hooked, and I started on this path of just saying, you know what, I'm going to meditate with this thing every day and see what happens.
Mm.
This program has many levels to it. So I started throughout the years, I started going through all the different levels. And as I was doing this, I was getting all the benefits of meditation, of all the things that they claimed. Most of them I've gotten. It's not all blissful though, because also negative things happen too, because it's going into your subconscious mind, into your unconscious mind, and just kind of digging up all the unresolved material from your unconscious mind. So that was one hell of a ride. Um,
Mm.
a lot of changes started happening. And 2 years in, I just woke up one day and I just lost the motivation to do stand up comedy. So I didn't stop right away. I was still going on because I was doing my TV show. So um, I started doing this meditation the 2 last years of my show. So yeah, season seven, sorry, season eight, season nine. While I was doing this meditation every day. The show came to an end because after doing it for 9 seasons, the show came to an end. So I was pitching other show ideas and doing all that type of stuff, and still doing stand up. And then one morning I woke up and I lost the motivation for doing it. So I did the last amount of shows that I was booked to do, and anything I got called for after that, I kind of just turned them down, um, which was a terrible thing to do because it was my source of income. So
Mm.
I was out of work for about 2 years. So I'm still doing this meditation every day. I'm out of work for 2 years. I'm just using the money that I have saved up, and I decided while I was doing this meditation, which I never stopped doing to this very day. I still do it. Um, I moved, so bought a house, all that stuff, and whatever. Moved into the town that I grew up in the community that I grew up in, and I just had this strong motivation to go into nonprofit work. So I didn't know how to get into that because I didn't have any background experiences. I had no credentials in that area, no educational background in that area. So I started to shadow a youth worker. Her name is Kim Alexander, and I started to shadow her to see what she did. And I said, you know what? I think I want to do this type of work. Uh, So I just got into, my heart just led me into that path, and I went into it. Um, there's another story within that, but it would take so much time of how I got into that work, because there's a lot of magical moments that happen throughout these times.
Of course.
So yeah, so these signs just showed up, and it led me into nonprofit, and I became a youth worker, program facilitator, for about 2.5 years. Still doing the meditation, all the different levels that was happening, but in that time, around 2006, I wanted to create my own version of this brainwave entrainment stuff. So I started to learn, started to study, had to learn, go into sound physics and all this different type of stuff that I had to learn how to do to apply this stuff. The thing that I already had in my background was musical engineering. So I already took lessons in
Mm.
musical engineering in college, and when it comes to making these brainwaves, you have to have some knowledge, basic knowledge of musical engineering. So I already had that background. So they already had me. They already gave me a step up. So I did
I
all
just
that.
have to say, the amount of times I've been speaking to someone who has a story where it's like something they did way back when that seeming has, you know, it's like part of their past, and then it suddenly is like, oh, now this is essential. This is, and it's like the
I
amount of
can,
times
yeah,
that's happened, I just is so magical. I love that so much.
it's amazing when that happens. It's like, oh, I can finally use this
Yes.
bit of knowledge.
Sorry, do go on.
Yeah, a bit of knowledge that I attained throughout the years with musical engineering. So I started through trial and error. I made these CDs, and I was giving them out to people who I knew who wanted to try this stuff, and just working out the math and trying to figure out how this stuff works. And the same company that I ordered the original CDs from, they even gave me some tips of how to make this stuff as well. So there was a guy who I spoken to a few times, and he gave me some hints of where I can go to and what software to download and put the stuff together. So I followed his lead, and I did all that type of stuff. And then for a number of years, I started trying to work out the trials and errors of how to figure this stuff out. Eventually, um, and then in 2008, um, I'm still meditating with the program, original program that I've been doing, because I was totally dedicated to that. Um, I came with an idea, and this idea came about in 2006, though. So while I was working out, learning how to use this technology, something came to me and said, "Well, what would happen if a person meditated?" And remember, I have no knowledge about things that happens in the psychedelic world. I don't know anything about any of this stuff. I don't know anything about non-duality. I don't know anything about any of this stuff. I come from a Christian background, a Pentecostal Christian background. I don't know any of this stuff except for a few metaphysical books that I've read. So this I had this idea. So what if I mixed meditation with psychedelics, thinking I would be the first one ever to do that. So what if I did meditation with psychedelics? And then I went on the internet, research information to see if there were any ancient civilizations that did this type of thing. And apparently there were tribes and civilizations that did a combination of meditation and psychedelics. So I said, okay, I'm going to try this with brainwave entrainment and psychedelics. So I wanted this path of experimenting with that stuff, but at the time it was with with marijuana. So I did my first experiment. I did with a friend of mine, um, and her name is Tara, and she's a big influence of getting me into psychedelics at that time period. And so we did some experiments where we would do brainwave entrainment with weed, and for me it was extraordinary. Something happened that never happens with weed, and I'm not a big weed smoker. It's something I've only
Mm.
done like a few times, but I'm not really huge on it. But I tried that experiment to see what would work, and I was very astonished at what happened when I combined the two. So I said, "Whoa, what would happen if I combined this stuff with psilocybin?" So at the time, I only tried psilocybin once because she was the one who introduced me to psychedelics. So I tried psilocybin once. So the second time doing psilocybin, I tried doing the two together by taking the psilocybin, waiting about 45 minutes, and then putting on the meditation, the brainwave entrainment CDs. And I was blown away at what took place. What took place then was totally different than what happened the first time when I did psilocybin. So I kept on that practice. I didn't do psychedelics all the time. It's just once in a while, here and there, if we had access to it, I would combine the two. And
Mm.
I did that for maybe about 2.5 years. So at this point now, so yeah, I did it for 2.5 years of combining the two. I did my daily brainwave entrainment, and slash traditional meditations every day, every morning. And then once in a while, maybe every 3 months or so, I'll try it with psilocybin, where you're under the effects for about 3 or 4 hours. Um, Now we're at the 5 year mark. So I'm a youth worker in my community. I'm working with all these people. You know, I'm more informed in regards to metaphysics and some of the other stuff that happens within the spiritual circle. I'm getting to know what all that stuff is all about. I'm spreading this type of knowledge throughout the people in my neighborhood, building a bit of an audience of people who are curious about that type of stuff. And then on the 5 year mark, this is 2008. Um, I do the program again. So I have the program. I did the psychedelic, which is psilocybin at the time. And my goal was, this is after reading Osho. So I was reading some Osho books because I was influenced by Osho through a guy who used to walk around. He never claimed to be an enlightened being, but that's what people called him. He was this guy, this black guy, long dreadlocks. He wore slippers. He didn't wear a robe, but in my mind, he's wearing a robe. Looked like Jesus. And he was just this unusual looking guy. And I was just like, who's this? What's this guy all about? So I used to go and just listen to some of the stuff that he would have to say. And one of the people that he was talking about was this guy named Osho. And so he read something from Osho and it caught my attention. And that was enough. So I went back, looked up Osho, started reading a lot of his work. I shouldn't say a lot, but a good amount for me to be like, whatever this guy has, this guru has, I want that. That's all I kept saying. Whatever this guru has, that's what I want. Because that's the thing that hit me directly. So one Saturday afternoon, I'm doing the program. I took the psychedelic, and my goal was, and at this point, I've already had experiences with, meeting entities and astral traveling and meeting aliens and all that stuff. All that stuff happened. I
With
can
and
go on for
without the
days.
psychedelics?
Only with.
Only with.
Those experiences happen only with. The other experiences that happen without the psychedelic were like, the moments of bliss. And at this point, I had this 4 hour full body orgasm from head to toe. All these things happened with the meditation alone. But with the meeting all the entities, that only happened with the psychedelic. So I did all those things. That didn't really it didn't really appeal to me to that degree. I found them exciting. I found them intriguing, but that's not what I wanted. So I remember taking the psychedelic, doing the program, and being very frustrated because I didn't get what I wanted out of it, because I wanted something beyond all that. So I finished my hour, because the CDs only last an hour. I finished my hour. I remember being frustrated, turning off the headphones, and sat there, and I'm not even feeling the high from the psilocybin. So I'm sitting there and I'm frustrated, and I'm like, oh, I really, really wanted something more than what I keep getting. And as I sat there, it happened. So whatever happened, I burst. And I just had this full realization that I was God. At this moment, I felt like I was all things, all animals, all creatures, all human beings, all microscopic creatures, reptiles, everything. It was so profound and so so miraculous, that blew my mind. If that's all that ever happened, I was satisfied with that. It was so mind blowing that I remember walking around and looking at the different things in my room, because it was a Saturday afternoon, and realizing that everything was divine. I remember passing my kids' room, and I looked at them, and I realized for the first time that they were divine, that they were a manifestation of not me, Morgan, but the manifestation of the divine witness that is that manifested all things into existence. And it was so profound. After when that wore off, I was in shock for about 2 weeks. I didn't know what to do with this information. I was just in total shock. I said, I think I'm going insane. How come no one's ever talked about this? I haven't even heard Osho talk about this. What the hell is good? Like, it was just so profound. So for 2 weeks, I didn't say anything to anyone about it. I just kept it. I was just in shock. I was in awe. I went to work every day, my mouth wide open, just like, I can't believe what just happened. And then eventually I told a coworker of mine. His name is Michael Israel. I told him, and he was the first person I ever told. And he listened to my story, and he was like, wow, that is absolutely amazing. And I'm like, I know. But what do I do with this? And he's like, I don't know. I don't know what that experience is like, but what you just told me is profound, man. I don't know what you're going to do with this story, but that's just amazing. So as time went on, um, I needed to talk about it. I needed to talk about it. So I started going around and just talking to people about this experience, but I told it as in the third person. Um, and then I started talking about this stuff because I'm a youth worker. So I would go to schools. I
Mm.
would talk to youth at schools. So there was a guy I knew, a teacher who was a philosophy teacher, and I asked him if I can come into his class once a month and talk about Eastern philosophy, which he allowed me to do. So he was at a Catholic school. So I would go to the school every month. I believe it was every month. I don't think it was every week. It was every month. And I would talk about Eastern philosophy. I would talk about this experience that I had. I didn't know anything about non-duality. I never heard that term before or anything like that. And that's what I did. And I just kept on doing that. And then it took about another 2 years before that experience happened again. I had many experiences in between that time period, but nothing like that again. So 2 years, probably 2.5 years later, it happened again. 2 weeks later, it happened again. A month later, it happened again. And this would happen with a psychedelic or without a psychedelic. It always would seem to happen. And I was just like, had this realization that I am everything that could ever exist. Um, Not realizing that there was more, that there was more, that
Mm.
this thing is infinite. I didn't have that knowledge yet, but I just kept going with this thing. And then as time went on, I said, okay, let me change the frequencies of these brainwave entrainment that we're doing, because we're doing like if you know about brainwaves, you're producing alpha, theta, delta, epsilon, and so on and so on. So it's okay. What if I adjusted and made a program, well, not a program, but a session where it was mostly alpha, and then maybe a session that was mostly theta, and another session that's mostly this and mostly that, and what would happen if you did that? And when you did that, it changed the effects of what would happen, especially under psychedelic, what would happen. And so I did this experiment. So other people experimented with me, jot down the information, whatever we needed to know of what happens in this stage and what happens here and what happens there, um, all that type of stuff. And then we eventually started to experiment with DMT to see what would happen if we did this on DMT. In this case, we're talking about NDMT. What would happen if we did this on MET? What would happen if we did it with different frequencies with psilocybin, like we were always been doing? And what would have happened if we did this on LSD? At the time, I was afraid of LSD. I've only heard about it, never experimented with it. But after doing some research, I said, you know what? I think I'm willing to try LSD and see what would happen under those conditions as well. So we went in doing these frequencies, doing
This
it
is
under LSD.
fascinating. It is so I love your like, just like let's do the
Let's
experiment.
just do the experiments and see what happened. Yeah, I still have all the books, all the written information until now, all the information that we gathered from doing all these different frequencies and under different psychedelics. Most of them were done under DMT and LSD. Um, um, yeah, so we jotted down
Did
all
you
that information.
have I know that this wasn't a kind of, strict scientific, research level of experiment, but still, did you have, I guess, some kind of hypothesis that you were working to? Like, what was the deeper intention, um, if there was one?
Um, I don't really remember. I don't think I even had one. I don't think I even had one. I just
It's more like just let's
I
see.
knew, yeah.
Mm,
So I knew what these things did without
mm,
meditation and without brainwave entrainment. What would happen if we combined the two, because it worked so well
mm.
with psilocybin. So I'm going on the basis of what would happen with what happened with psilocybin. Of course,
Yeah.
when we did with LSD, it was even much deeper and more profound than psilocybin. And when we did it with DMT, the DMT was much more profound with than the psilocybin. And
Mm.
I can go on for days of the experiences that happened under DMT and what happened under LSD, but we don't have that much time, so I won't go into it today. But if there's another time where we probably can, but unless you have questions about it, I'm more than
I
happy
think,
to.
yeah, for the moment, I mean, I am really fascinated in this whole topic. So perhaps we will do a second part that really focuses on this. I guess for the moment, I would love to know, I guess just at a headline level, is there a way of kind of summarizing the key points that you discovered from that work?
Well, under well, with DMT, because there was a group of us. We were talking about maybe 40 people, 40 of us.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they were doing these
Mm.
different experiments, but not everyone was doing the experiments with the brainwave entrainment. So I had something to compare it to. What happens with people who are doing with the brainwave entrainment versus people that weren't doing with brainwave entrainment? And the experiences based on our discussions, it seemed that with the entrainment was much more profound. Things happened with the people that were under the entrainment that the people that weren't under the entrainment weren't getting.
Mm.
At least majority of the times.
Mhm.
So we had those notes that we were able to compare under LSD throughout the years, because this is gosh, this was from, we're going back 11 years. So with the LSD, those experiments started 11 years ago, and they still continue till today. So with other people, I haven't experimented after, which I'll get into since 2019, but there's other people in that circle who are still experimenting and jotting down information in regards to what happens in these states. But what I've experienced personally, I would say, and I had to go to Ken Wilber's work to kind of map down what was happening in all these different stages,
Mm.
because I was experiencing all these different types of mysticism. So, not talking about the non-dual experience yet, but we were dealing with like with natural mysticism and deity mysticism and
Mm.
all these other things that would happen. So under LSD, you end up, depending on the frequency that you're using, in this case delta. So you're doing 20 minutes in alpha, 20 minutes in theta, and 40 minutes in delta. So in that time period, by the time you hit the delta position after 20 minutes of doing alpha and theta, you drop into, you could anyway drop into the collective unconscious, where you're
Mm.
dealing with the pain and suffering of all human beings. And also it can get to the point where you experience the pain and suffering of Gaia itself. And when I say pain and suffering, I don't really necessarily mean this in the bad way. I'll say it in the way where Gaia is manifesting nature, and it's going through childbirth in that sense. And so it's
Mm.
going through a form of labor as it's manifesting everything, and there's a pain that comes along with that. So as it's manifesting nature in that sense, it goes to a cycle of pain, labor, and suffering to produce that into being. And so
Mm.
when you tap into that, you can feel all that. You can feel exactly what Gaia is going through, not just Gaia itself, but just nature itself, what nature does from a
Mm.
universe, cosmic perspective. Um, a lot of things would happen in between where you experience all the pain and suffering of human beings. So whether it's torture, molestation, rape, assassinations, genocide, abortion, all that stuff you can feel. Um, they were so painful. They're so extremely painful that you get to a point where you want to just end it. And as soon as you have that feeling where you feel like you want to end it, you snap, and then you hit a period of a spiritual awakening. So
Mm.
that's what would happen. So it would get so intense and so excruciating, and then after a certain point you break, and then you have the sense of oneness and all that, and that's what would seem to happen on a regular basis. And
Mm.
when you change the frequency slightly, the experiences would change. Um, Generally speaking, anyway, because it's different for everybody.
What's and maybe this is better for an episode focused on this specifically. What I'm wondering is, so my experiences have been very much kind of from a shamanic perspective, and typically, obviously this is going to vary culture to culture, plant teacher to plant teacher, but typically in a shamanic ceremony using plant teachers, often there will be a sound element, you know, the shaman singing, chanting, it could be drums. And it's really, what I'm wondering is if that is just naturally creating similar effects to what you're creating with your brain entrainment. Have you looked at sort of similarities of that kind before?
Oh yeah, did all of that. Even joined in on the shamanic uh, rituals myself, and
Mm.
compared the difference. So I would compare them to ayahuasca,
Mhm.
and not just me, but a group of people. It's hard to use me as an example because I've already been using the entrainment for, at this
Mm.
point, how many years. So I had
Mhm.
to compare notes with people who've never used brain entrainment. But there was a difference in regards to because it was twice where I did use brainwave entrainment during an ayahuasca ceremony. I snuck it in into the ceremony.
Bad boy.
Just to compare notes. And another friend of mine, he did the same thing as well. So he did it without the brainwave entrainment, and another time with the brainwave entrainment to see what would happen. And
But
we
with
both
the
came to
shaman
with the
creating
shaman,
whatever. Yeah.
yeah, doing
Yeah.
all doing the playing the music and all
Mm.
that stuff. So we're doing the brainwave entrainment while listening to the music that's being played. So
Mm.
both is happening at the same time. But what we have noticed that brainwave entrainment. Remember, we're talking about low carrier frequency brainwave entrainment. I can't vouch for regular brainwave entrainment that you can get off the internet, that you can get from YouTube and all that stuff. But low carrier frequency brainwave entrainment is much more powerful than the average brainwave entrainment that's out there. So when you know how to learn how to use carrier frequencies, that makes the difference. It's what makes it really, really potent. So by
What
lowering
does
the
that
carrier
mean?
frequency,
I have no idea about low
um,
carrier. What does that mean?
so in brainwave entrainment, if we're talking about say like binaural beats, binaural beats is made up basically of two tones. We're using a lot more than two, but in this sense, we're using two tones. Where if you're playing a frequency of 10 hertz in one ear and 9 frequencies in the other ear, the son of your brain will make up the difference, which would be 1 hertz. So that's what the brain will interpret from these two tones, will be 1 hertz. Um, that's a beat frequency. So the 1 hertz that you hear is a beat frequency. The two tones that you're playing in each ear are pitch frequencies. So you have a pitch frequency of 9 hertz and a pitch frequency of 10 hertz in the other ear, and your brain will make up a beat frequency of 1 hertz. But if I change the pitch frequency of the 9 and the 10 and I make them lower, as long as they're one off of each other, I'll still create a frequency of 1 beat frequency, but the carrier frequency would be lower than before. So I'm still producing a 1 beat frequency, but the carrier frequency is lower because the two tones that I'm using, the lower one of the two tones is the carrier frequency, and the other tone that it's carrying is the onset frequency. And that
Mm.
will create a lower carrier frequency. So as long as the person knows how that works into the mathematics of how to lower the carrier frequency, you'll get the same beat frequency, but at a lower carrier frequency. I'd have
And
to
why
go
does
into a
that
whole.
matter? Why is a low carrier frequency important?
A lower carrier frequency creates higher amplitude. So the lower the carrier
Mm.
frequency, the higher the amplitude, which just means more power.
Right. Okay, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So carry on what you're saying. So what did you notice about the, going back to my question, what you could see via the brain entrainment versus the kind of sounds that a shaman perhaps would be making in a ceremony?
Yeah, the experience, I don't know how to explain the experiences, but they're very, very different. They're very different. But in regards to the carrier frequency, we had to do experiments where we used high carrier frequencies, because remember, we're using low carrier frequencies. So when
Mm.
you're using high carrier frequencies, it's almost impossible to break into a non-dual state.
Mm.
Right? It only happens when the carrier frequencies get lower and lower. So if someone was
Right.
doing Unity is the name of my program. So if someone's using Unity at level 1, they would have a different experience if they were using level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, because as you go to different levels, they get lower and lower in carrier frequencies.
Uh-huh.
The carrier frequency is too high for the brain, because the lower the carrier frequency, the more the two hemispheres of the brain can synchronize with each other. So the lower the carrier frequency and the better the entrainment, the two hemispheres of your brain will synchronize, and that's how you get whole brain thinking. So my theory is that if a person is able to produce whole brain thinking, you have a better chance of having a non-dual experience, because now the two hemispheres of the brain are being synchronized with each other.
Is it, this might be really oversimplifying it, so apologies if so, but is it because with the lower carrier frequencies, the brain's almost needing to sort of do more work to sync because it
Yeah, yeah.
is that
Your brain, I would say that your brain is doing more work,
mm,
because it's being I don't want to use the word forced, but it's being coerced into really taking the two hemispheres, because with most people's brains, we're more prominent in one side over the other. So some of us are more right brain hemisphere dominant, and some are more left brain hemisphere dominant. So the whole idea is, how do you take the brain and get the two sides of the two hemispheres to become integrated? And you can do that. You
Mm.
can do that by integrating the two hemispheres of the brain. I believe that that's one of the main points why people have mystical experiences the way that they do, is by integrating the two hemispheres of the brain. Some people say that it's because you're using a lot of your right side of the brain. The right side of the brain does have its qualities, and it does produce certain type of experiences. But if you want to end up having a non-dual experience, even up to the level of absolute monism, is about combining the two hemispheres of the brain to create that.
Mm. Okay. I've got a billion questions on this, but I'm going to pause for the
Mhm.
moment. And it may well be that we just need to do a whole program on this because
The science behind the whole thing. Yeah.
carry on with your story, please.
Yeah. So, but when I was talking about ayahuasca, that's years later. That's years later. So the whole time we're experimenting with the DMT, LSD, psilocybin. It
Mhm.
was only about 7 years ago, 6 years, 7 years ago, when we found a shaman. We started to experiment I was just talking about earlier about with what happened with ayahuasca,
Mhm.
um, and with a lot of success with that too. So we did the experiments with ayahuasca. So now we had these type of psychedelics in our on our in the bag. Um, I'm not sure where to go with the story because there's so many things that's happened within that time period. But to make a long story short, um, I started to run these experiments later on, and this was on my own. Nobody else joined in on this with 5-MeO DMT. So it's
Mhm.
okay. We know what happens with psilocybin. We know what happens with LSD. We know what happens with DMT and NDMT. What would happen with 5-MeO DMT? So of course, I can't bring the headphones and the device in with 5-MeO DMT because I don't know what people know. 5-MeO DMT is a whole different ballgame. It's a whole different um, uh, psychedelic altogether. So even though it shares the same name as NNDMT, they're totally two different molecules. Um, Molecularly, from the molecular standpoint, it's only off by one oxygen that makes a difference, but it's a totally different psychedelic altogether. So for those who don't know, and DMT is very visual. It's extremely visual. 5-MeO is not necessarily visual. It's more of an insight. It's a feeling. But I can't bring the headphones. I can't use the device and the headphones when it comes to 5-MeO DMT because for what people probably don't know is you may end up having a full body like spasm,
Mm.
where you can't control your body movements and stuff like that. So bringing in headphones is not ideal.
And it
So
has to be headphones so that you've got the different pitches
yeah,
going
so you
in.
can
Yeah.
going through the
Mhm.
left and the right ear. So in these sessions, I had to do it without, and so I had to do it without. But at this point now, the whole point of doing the brainwave entrainment is to be in these permanent states of being. So that's the
Mm.
point. So it's not about taking the headphones, putting them on, and only being in a meditative state when you're doing your practice.
Mm.
This is about how do you make a permanent shift where you're always in these states, and also the whole point of it is spiritual growth and development and all that type of stuff.
Mhm.
So all these things may start to change about the way you behave and the way how you take action towards certain things and things like that once you start to grow spiritually, which happens through because the claim is when you use these low carrier frequencies that your 1 hour of this program would be like 8 hours of traditional meditation, at least
Ah.
um,
Mhm.
about 8 hours, because the lower the carrier frequency, the more time you're actually in the equivalent of a traditional meditation, you're spending more time in a meditative state, which
Gotcha.
happens
Yeah.
with a
Mhm.
low carrier frequency. So at this
Which would
point,
take longer to reach through traditional meditation.
yeah, it would take longer to work.
Mm.
Probably still as effective, it just takes a longer time
Yeah. Mhm.
to do that. So I should go back a little bit. That back 12 years ago, I remember I was doing a workshop for my youth, and I remember falling into something shifted where I fell into a samadhi state, which I'm still in to this very day. So something shifted, and they always remain there. So I knew that it was working in regards to the permanent shifts that the claims that were made
Mm.
about low carrier frequency brainwave entrainment. So that shift happened. So now I'm still doing these experiments where sometimes I did the experiments without the entrainment and see what would happen if I wasn't using the entrainment, and what would happen if I listened to other types of music. So all those things that we did too. Um, now in 2018, I'm now experimenting with 5-MeO DMT. And again, with 5-MeO DMT, the claim is with 5-MeO DMT that a person can have a pure non-dual experience. At least,
Mm.
yeah, on average anyway, can end up having a pure non-dual experience.
So
Um, I
what's your, because of this, if I understood the timelines correctly, at this point, um, you're already in a state that the whole work is about producing. What's your particular intention to now do this? Do what you were doing in terms of experimenting with the 5-MeO DMT?
well, the intention was always spiritual enlightenment.
But are you now
Yeah.
looking at it for other people, as in like what would work for other people? Or is this still for yourself primarily at
Yeah,
this
this is
point?
something I wanted for all people.
Yeah. Hmm.
So yeah, but that wasn't necessarily their goal. Their goal is this is trippy, this is amazing. And of course some of those people ended up having spiritual insight and spiritual transcendence and all that stuff, but not very many of them at the non-dual stage, non-dual
Mm.
stage. So only very few people of the group that we worked with shifted to that level. There's
Mm.
only been like 4 of us that shift to that, but we're talking about like 100 people here.
Yeah.
So at one point there's about 40 of us that's doing with the entrainment, but there's other people too. So there's about 150 the people who are experimenting on different levels, some without the entrainment, some with the entrainment, some doing
Mm.
other practices and things like that sort. But I'm not gathering all the information of all the other stuff that people are doing. There's just too much information to gather. But at this point, for my own personal thing, um, I want it all. Right? If there's more, whatever that is, I want it. I'm happy with what I have now, but if there's anything more than anything anyone has to offer, I want that too. So I'm going in hard, I'm going in deep.
Hmm.
So I met with a practitioner and we started doing sessions on with 5-MeO DMT, and that alone blew away everything I've ever done, every experience I've ever had. All of that was just blown away with just one 5-MeO DMT session. Um, I'm not even going to get into how mind blowing that was. Just take my word that it was absolutely miraculous, so profound. I've never experienced anything like that. From that standpoint, you can experience Brahman in this moment of cosmic mind, cosmic consciousness, um, where you see a really, really, really bright light. You enter to the light, and you become one with the light. And then that light, really, you realize that that is the consciousness, the ocean of all consciousness, and you realize that you're the actual universe and beyond. Those experiences were so profound um, that that alone changed my life. So everything that happened prior to that, I know that these were the stepping stones, but that alone did it for me. Um, at this stage now, months later, a guru comes into town. This guru's name is Paramahamsa Vishwananda. He's a guru out of Germany, a controversial guru. If you look him up, he's very controversial based on the information that has been said about him. But I got an email from someone. I don't know who I got it from. I don't know how I ended up on their mailing list. But they said that he's coming into town. He's giving darshan. And for those who don't know what darshan is a blessing from a guru. So the guru, he puts his hand on your head, looks into your eyes for 20 seconds, and sends you on your way. So I said, I'm down for that. So I signed up September 3rd, 2018. Sorry, September 3rd, 2019. All right, because I've already done the experiments with 5-MeO. And even what happens after the experience of 5-MeO, a lot of strange things happens, which I won't go into right now, but a lot of strange things happens with that, where your body is pushing out all the blocked chi out of all of the nadis and all that type of stuff. You're having spasms on a regular basis. That this is not just happening during the sessions, but this is happening after the sessions. You wake up in spasms. All these strange things would happen. Rashes will appear on your body, at least with me anyway. And all these things would happen. Your facial structure will change as you're walking down the street. Your face will just go into a smile on its own with its own intentions, because you're going through Kriya at this point. These things would happen. Your hands would fly up on its own. Your feet will fly up on its own. It'll do all these strange things. But I wasn't. None of that stuff scared me because I studied all this already. So I already knew that these things happen during Kriya. So again, September 3rd, 2019, I meet with this guru. So I go down. I meet this guru. I waited in line. I swear, for a couple of hours. Finally, met up face to face with Paramahamsa Vishwananda. He asked me something, but I don't remember what he asked me. So I couldn't answer his question. but he put his hands on my head, looked into my eyes for about 20 seconds, and sent me on my way. After he sent me on my way, my body did all the same spasms that it did with 5-MeO DMT. So I said, something is going on here. Something is definitely going on here. And this is September 3rd, 2019, I should say. This kept happening throughout the months. I ended up having another spiritual awakening during that time period, which was probably around November. And then December 14th of 2019, it happened. So at December 14, 2019, I had the full non-dual, even beyond non-dual, I would say put in the category of absolute monism, where I was absolutely everything in existence. I was every human being, every animal, every insect, every microscopic creature, every atom, every subatomic particle, every vibrating string. I was past, present, and future. I was every grain of sand. I was every blade of grass. I was every raindrop. I was every planet. I was every solar system, every galaxy, every universe, because there's multiple universes. I was all of that. I was the Big Bang. I was prior to the Big Bang prior to that, the Big Bang prior to that, the Big Bang prior to that. I was the beginning, the end, the beginningless beginning, the endless end. I was Samsara. I was Nirvana. I was Moksha. I was Brahman, Power Brahman, Krishna, God, Allah, Jehovah. There was no distinction between subjective and objective. There's no distinction between gender, male, female, and all the genders in between. There was no distinction between God and man. There was no distinction between absolutely everything. But in this case, not only was there no distinction, but that was also erased. Everything came from one source. Everything was one source, yet there is no source at all. But everything that came into being wasn't into being, because all of that is just an imagination created by the mind, the cosmic mind of Brahman itself. This thing was so extraordinary that when it happened, again, I broke into, and this happened while I was just listening to Unity. So just listening to Unity when this took place. All that took place, all that happened. I was left broken, crying, bawling. Every part of my body felt like a python snake was moving up my spine all the way up, because at this point, the non-dual experience already wore off. So I've already got to the non-dual experience, and then I ended up having a Kundalini awakening on top of that, which is very rare that the two would, yeah, would happen at the same time. But I broke into a Kundalini awakening where I felt this python snake crawling up my spine, but my body was one with the snake, yet the snake was one with my environment, because I still couldn't make the full distinction between my body and the environment. It felt like every time I moved, the universe moved with me, and every time the universe moved, I moved with it. It was so profound that this snake, this python thing, traveled up my body, went through all my chakras, and when it hit my crown chakra, flower petals of light broke out of my skull. Trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of petals broke out of my skull, pouring out of my skull, hitting the ground. And as it hit the ground, it dissipated as it hit the ground. Everything broke out into light. I laughed, I cried, I screamed, I yelled. Everything that I had that made me, I had to break loose and let go of everything. And that day was by far, the most profound experience of my entire existence, and probably everyone's existence is all in one. I don't even know how to go about that, but that's what did it for me.
Wow. Goodness.
Yeah.
So where's that taken you since? How's that informed what you do, how you personally practice, the work you do with other people? We're kind of coming up on time, so with some intention of us being able to as much as I'd love to carry on this conversation, we need to bring it to a close. I would love to know kind of like, where's that brought you to now?
So it's interesting because a lot of people ask that. What I have to make clear, though, the changes started happening from 2008 when I had the first awakening. And I just want people to know that there's a difference between peak experience and spiritual awakening. So something happens within a peak experience, and there's something that happens at a spiritual awakening. and there's something that happens at spiritual enlightenment. So I'm putting these three in different categories.
Mm.
So I'm claiming that in 2008, that was a spiritual experience. I had many peak experience prior to that, but that was a spiritual awakening. That's when the changes started to happen, where I started to work differently in regards to how I spoke about certain things. At that point, I was uploaded with a lot of insight, spiritual insight, which I still do today, where I had to start putting out quotes on the internet, and that inspired a book that a colleague and friend of mine, Arian Herbert, wrote, a book called The God Behind the God. And that book was inspired by my quotes. 50 of my quotes that he picked out of maybe 200 quotes that he picked out. And he wrote a whole book on these quotes. At that point, I started to teach non-duality. Other people, as you know, were inspired by some of my teachings, and they started on the spiritual path themselves. These people now are older, because these were younger people at the time. These people are now older, and a lot of these people are doing amazing things. Some of them have already started their own spiritual ventures, and some of them are now teachers, and are now teaching the different aspects of spirituality within their own vein. A lot of things happened, but at December 14th, what happened after that is, prior to that experience, I set up a program where I wanted to get children to do brainwave entrainment. But I know it was difficult to get children to listen to an hour of brainwave entrainment every day. So I did a thing where I would play brainwave entrainment under hip hop beats, hip hop R&B beats. And I introduced it to a principal. The principal allowed me to do it. And we got students to start doing brainwave entrainment through hip hop R&B music. And that
Oh,
program is
wow.
called, it's called it's called Mind at Ease. Nine
Mm.
for the Mind was a program that I was doing for 2 years with a group of youth in regards to spirituality and things like that. But this was called Mind at Ease. What happened after December 14th, that carried on, because right after December 14th, we went into 2020, when the pandemic happened. So that took place right after my experience. And that's when I started to introduce the program to hundreds of other kids. So now we're doing a lot of online programs. So during that time period, I connected with a whole bunch of other teachers, and we started doing brainwave and training for about 700, 800 kids at this point. At this point now, I'm working with something that I never did before. I work with a lot of special needs children. And that's what I'm doing right now. I work with special needs children and trying to help them. Some of that is through brainwave entrainment, and some of that is just through compassion and care. So a lot
Mm.
of that type of stuff happens. But all this stuff that I've been doing, the transformation has been happening since 2008, and the transformation is still happening. So there's things that are still happening to me right now as we're speaking. And right now I'm going through a rough period of a rough transition with something else is happening mentally and physically, which it's been happening for the last 3 weeks or so. So I feel something else is also coming, because this is not as much as this is the greatest thing I've ever done. It comes with its challenges as well, because if you read the documents of what happens with the mystics and the gurus who on their journey, there's a lot of stuff that happens, especially with Kundalini syndromes and things of that sort. So it's a double-edged sword, but I would say it's totally worth it. If I had to do it all over again, I would do it all over again. But a lot of things happened after that. Some negative. Got through a number of kidney stone attacks, which was happening from the very moment I started meditating. These things were happening. It
Oh.
stopped for many years, and then after in 2020, it started again. And I had to go to. I eventually went, and the doctors couldn't really do anything about it. They said I have to pass this kidney stone on my own, and all that stuff. So I went a year ago. I went to a chi doctor, a chi master, I should say, Master Lee, and he treated me. I've never had these pains since. So all these things would come up, and I get someone to help me treat it, and I move on my journey and all that. But I would say from like everything that's happened from 2019, I wouldn't want anything else. This is
Mm.
the greatest thing I've ever done. The greatest I've, not just how I feel. It's about the witness that's within. I don't even want to say it's within me, but the witness, the divine witness, is stable and watching everything that's happening around me. So it doesn't matter what I'm necessarily doing. It's what the thing that's inside me or outside of me that is the stable watcher, or the stable witness, that allows everything to happen as it happens and how it's supposed to happen. I see everything as perfect, even if I don't particularly like the situation. I see it as a perfect happening that is taking place. So that's where I'm at now, and I'm just working with, as I said, I'm working with a lot of people of special needs, people on the spectrum, and doing all that. So I'm just testing myself on how far I can go in regards to helping people. But this is something I've been
Mm.
doing from since 2006, and more of that started happening in 2008 after my first grand experience until now.
Amazing. Well, this has been yeah, what an incredible story. And I definitely feel like there's at least another episode in us to go deeper into some of the things that I would love to know more about. But for now, we need to bring the conversation to a close. Where can listeners find out more about you and your work?
um, uh, well, there's the energy. There's the energy, the program. Before I didn't have it officially on the market. After doing Steve's podcast, it forced me to put it out there to the world. So it's out there. People have been joining the program, and if you go to my Linktree link, you'll find the link in there. So you'll find me on IG, you'll find me on Instagram, you'll find me on Facebook. Sorry, I'm not on Facebook at the moment, but you'll find me on YouTube. Um, I still have a Tumblr account there. There's stuff there too, but Unity can be purchased. People can order get the first level if they are interested in this program. It's an amazing program. It's I would say it's one of the most powerful brainwave entrainment programs out there. It's not the most popular one because it's just me. There's not much of a backing in it, and there's other programs like it that are just as powerful. But I had what we came up with throughout the years, and also too with the work with psychedelics, it also gave me a lot of information of how to develop this program as well. Also, this program is also incorporated with vortex-based mathematics, which we didn't get to talk about today.
No,
But
no, we
vortex, yeah,
definitely need to do a part two
we
because that
didn't
was one
talk
of the
about
things I
that.
really wanted to get
Yeah.
into.
But there's a time period where that became a thing where I decided to use low carrier frequencies with the algorithms of vortex-based mathematics, which was created
Mm.
by mathematician Marco Rodin. So I combined the two of those together. That's what makes my program different. So when people are meditating with energy, they're also getting the algorithm that's supposed to be, the claim is that algorithm is the same algorithm of the entire universe, which is 1, 2, 4, 8, 7,
Ah.
5. Yeah.
Gotcha. Amazing. Thank you so much, Morgan. This has been so fascinating. I so appreciate you and what you're doing. Really,
Yeah, and
really.
sorry, I had to rush everything because I was like, how much time do I have? So there's a lot of stuff that I'm cutting out just to whatever to summarize this whole thing, because the story is a 28-year-long story. So, and up to December 14th, that was 16 and a half years at that point. So at that point, I already did about 7,000 hours of meditation at this point. So there's a lot of stuff that went into it that I wasn't able to get into, but these things can be broken down, and people can email me innovativecoaching@gmail.com. Ask me any questions you like. I answer everyone's questions. If I see your email, I will answer your questions. I don't ignore anyone. So yeah, if you look me up, you'll find me. I'll answer any question that you have. And yeah, that's here. I'll also send you a copy of Unity as well. So if you like, feel free to try it out. I sent you and Rebecca a copy of it. So feel free if you like to try it out, see what it's all about. And yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I certainly will. I certainly will. Thank you so much. Thank you.
No, my pleasure.